When we think of the Wild West, the image that comes to mind is often that of grizzled lawmen, dusty streets, and six-shooters at the ready. But tucked away in the pages of frontier history are the stories of women who stepped into the same dangerous roles, sometimes by choice, sometimes by circumstance, and proved that enforcing the law was not just a man's job. In the late 1800s, cultural norms and legal barriers meant women in law enforcement were rare. Still, the frontier was a place where necessity often overruled tradition. Life was dangerous, and lawmen's careers could be short. In towns where a sheriff died in the line of duty, it was not uncommon for his widow to be appointed to finish his term. These women, sometimes called widow sheriffs, found themselves suddenly responsible for keeping the peace, guarding prisoners, and facing down the same threats that had taken their husbands. One of the earliest known examples was Mary Frances Miller, who took over as sheriff of Eddy County, New Mexico, after her husband's death. She didn't just sit behind a desk. She personally handled prisoner transfers and court duties, earning the respect of those she served. In Idaho, Annie Sadler also became sheriff after her husband's death and carried on the job without hesitation. In both cases, these women proved that the badge was not just a piece of metal. It was a responsibility they could carry. Some women didn't come into the role through marriage at all. Mary Owens, for example, became a deputy U.S. Marshal in the Indian Territory in the 1890s. In a time when the area was plagued by outlaws, her work was no less dangerous than that of her male counterparts. Owens rode the same trails, arrested the same criminals, and took the same risks, becoming one of the few women to hold such a federal position before the turn of the century. There were also women like Constance Kopp in the early 1900s, who became one of the first officially appointed female deputy sheriffs in the nation. And while her story takes place after the classic Wild West era, it reflected the slow but steady shift toward women taking a more active role in law enforcement. These female sheriffs and deputies were exceptions to the rule, but their stories remind us that the frontier was a place where skill and grit could matter more than tradition. They worked under the same laws, faced the same dangers, and often had to prove themselves twice over. Once for their ability, and again for daring to defy gender norms. In a landscape where survival was never guaranteed, they carried a badge with the same courage as any man, leaving behind a quiet but powerful legacy in the history of the American West.